And good to meet you, by the way. I
Oh, you too.
just started here. I moved from Winnipeg 2.5 weeks ago.
Oh,
I'm
you're
from
from
Ottawa originally.
okay, because Winnipeg's
I
doing really well COVID-wise, and you came
Oh
to
my
a place
gosh,
that,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
we had in Manitoba, yeah, I think they're at 320 cases or something in the whole province now.
Yeah,
Yeah, they've done
most of it
really well.
felt.
Really well, yeah. Okay, are you able to shuffle like a tiny bit to your left
Sure. Let's how about move the camera
or move
this way.
yeah, perfect.
How's that?
Better, a touch more.
More? Sure.
Yeah, just because when this records, it automatically crops. I only get the middle of the screen. So if you're not totally centered, it's only going to be like half your face.
Okay. Is that better?
And that's perfect. Are you able to back up a smidge?
Sure.
Perfect. Sorry, I know I'm demanding.
No problem.
Okay. Now we need
I'm
to.
used to it now.
I bet. Eh? I just need to maybe a touch more, and then angle a little bit the camera a tiny bit back, the same way again. So you'll
Okay,
have to move to your left a touch.
so here and how's that?
That's perfect. Absolutely
Yay.
perfect. Cool. Okay. So I'll get you to start. If you can just spell your first and last name and give me your official title, please.
Sure. I am Raywat Deonandan, Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist and associate professor, Faculty of Health Sciences, University of Ottawa.
Perfect. And so I guess my first question, or I'd like to get your reaction to start. We're a little over 24 hours now into stage 3 in Ottawa, in Eastern Ontario, or most of Eastern Ontario. What are your initial thoughts? Do you have any comments? What have you observed so far?
Okay, a few things. One is that it's way too early to know anything. 24 hours tells us nothing, except what you can gauge on social media around people's reactions. It looks like people are excited, scared, and mostly responsible. I haven't seen any scary videos of people, crouched together in bars, sucking on each other's faces and breathing on each other. Yet, that might still be coming, but so far, so good. What I'm hearing right now is confusion around why this strategy that ignores perhaps some things that are more important in some people's eyes, like school reopenings, summer camps, that sort of thing. So I haven't got an answer for that, except that the criteria for opening up the economy aren't just epidemiological, which are the criteria I can speak to. They're also economic and psychological and sociological. So, for example, why are bars opening up, but schools aren't, and summer schools aren't either? And the reason for that is there's a public pressure to have bars open. I think, if I can segue for a second, I think 100% of our focus from this point forward should be on how do we open schools safely in the fall. And anything that deviates and distracts us from that goal ultimately does not serve that purpose. And the reason for that is that if the schools can be opened safely, then the rest of the economy can be opened up safely, because parents have to send their kids somewhere. So when bars and gyms and so forth open up, that may trigger an uptick of cases. And if the community load is high, that puts the schools at greater risk. So the best way to have the economy and the schools open in the fall is to keep the community caseload down. So everything we do right now should be focused on keeping the caseload down. So in the last 24 hours, those are the questions I'm hearing from the general public: is how does this serve the goal of servicing the children in the fall? And of course, I'm hearing a lot of fear. So people seem very unprepared to go to bars, and I totally understand that. But there's that other sector, of course, that is more than willing to go forth and to enjoy their adult beverage. For that group, I really hope it's done in a responsible manner. I'll add that there is some confusion or some heterogeneity in the way that different municipalities are deploying their bylaws. So some have patios are open earlier, some have different times for when alcohol can be served, and it's unclear who is paying the price of tickets that are being served by bylaw officers. So that heterogeneity is both good and bad. It's good in the sense that different locales must have local responses that service their community ethos and personality. It's bad in the sense that there's confusion across the province as to what actually can and can't happen. And if where you live things aren't amenable, there's a temptation to travel further distances to get what you want. And that, of course, will possibly spread infection further. So we're way too early right now to see how this goes. But wait 2 weeks, which is the mantra we always give you. Wait 2 weeks and we'll see exactly what this manifests as. It's a lot of stuff I gave you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. I only have a couple other things to touch on because that was most of it. So I was on this beat yesterday, and I spoke to a lot of restaurant owners. I spoke to people out on patios and indoors, and that's kind of the same vibe I got, was that although it is now an option to be inside, one of the places I visited had nobody inside all day long. They had a few reservations inside in the evening, but people were still choosing to stay outside. That's reflective of kind of what you're getting is some people, like, there was this big rush. Everyone's excited for stage 3. But so far, it doesn't seem like anyone, or there's massive crowds rushing to go hang out inside a restaurant.
So when you tie a dog to a tree, the dog will pull on the leash really hard to get away. Then you untie the dog and he sits down exactly where you left him. Because it was never about the desire to go somewhere else. It was about the freedom to choose to go somewhere else. So maybe people just want things to be open. It doesn't mean they're going to actually go to those places. They're going to, make choices that are relevant for them and their families. They just resist the authoritarian push of the state to restrict some things from their lives. That might be what we're seeing here. And I do like the fact that people understand that outdoor is safer than indoors. And it fills me with a great confidence going forward that people seem to be understanding much of the public health messaging and taking it to heart better than other parts of the world. Of course, I'm referring to south of the border where all kinds of chaos is ensuing. So I'm always an optimist. And what I see in the last 24 hours regarding people's behaviors as stage 3 unrolls fills me with more optimism. I think people are going to do the responsible thing, despite these strange protests we're always having around the freedom not to wear a mask. Those, I think, are sporadic, low intensity events that get a lot of attention, but really do not reflect the majority of public sentiment.
And so lastly, you touched on it a little bit. The focus is to kind of, like you said, keep that caseload low, make sure that we're putting ourselves in the best case scenario to be able to have people go back to school in the fall. Is there a message you want people to hear, or is there anything people need to continue to be aware of, maybe even more so now, as we enter stage 3 and restrictions are loosened?
So, not to sound like a broken record, but this isn't over. In fact, this is still the beginning. The immediate acute threat is over, that the explosion of cases back in February and March and April. But now we're in the holding pattern phase of this. And this is where things get difficult. And it's really incumbent upon the common citizen to do their part more than ever before. Previously, it was the job of the doctors to keep you from dying at the hospital. And it was the job of the epidemiologist to figure out how this thing is spreading. Then it was the job of the government to put forth a plan for reopening. Now it's the job of every citizen to do their part to keep everything open. And that means being responsible and following public health guidelines. Really, this is probably the best example of how every individual citizen's actions impact everybody else. A pandemic has a way of revealing the cracks in a society and the fragilities of a society. I like to think this pandemic will reveal the strength of our society in a way in which we pull together to help each other. And I want citizens to really understand that's what's going on here. We're being called upon to act responsibly to keep everybody else safe. It's a glorious, beautiful thing if done correctly.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
I think
that was
we covered
good.
it all. Cool.
Love your hair, by the way. Good haircut.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks. Okay, bye-bye.
Have a good one.